Imagine you graduating college and stepping into the real world, only to realize the world moved the goalposts. Rent, bills, and debt chew up every paycheck. You feel hopeful one day and hopeless the next. That's the reality for many Gen Zers today. Surveys and data paint a stark picture. Gen Z is overwhelmingly stressed about money. For example, Deloitte found that roughly 6 in 10 young people say they live paycheck to paycheck, and cost of living is their #1 concern. Young workers cite inflation, housing, and financial insecurity as daily worries. This isn't just the latest millennial crisis meme. It's real life for a generation facing unprecedented economic pressure. Owning a home used to be a rite of passage. For Gen Z, it's becoming a pipe dream. All around the world, the numbers tell the same story. Housing costs have skyrocketed far beyond what young earners can afford. Consider this: USA, only about 33% of 27-year-old Gen Zers own a home today. In contrast, 40% of baby boomers and nearly 38% of Gen Xers owned homes at that age. In other words, Gen Z is significantly behind where previous generations were, at the same age, when buying their first house. UK, new buyers born in the late 1990s are facing astonishing mortgage bills. The average young homeowner's monthly payment is now about £1,739, almost double the £863 average that millennials paid, all figures inflation adjusted. With UK house prices pushing £293,000 in 2024, Gen Z must borrow far more, at higher rates, for even a modest home. Australia, a recent survey found only 1 in 16% Gen Z Aussies own homes, versus 24% of boomers at the same age. Even worse, 20% of young Australians think engagement or kids aren't on the cards yet, they're too busy surviving. 1 in 5 Gen Zers in Oz flat out believes they'll never afford a home. Canada, housing anxiety is sky high. 73% of Gen Z Canadians say they're worried they won't save enough for a down payment. Overall, 70% of Canadians and a whopping 75% of renters now say owning a home seems impossible. Young Canadians are even contemplating moving abroad to find affordable housing. These statistics highlight a global trend. In every surveyed country, Gen Z is much less likely to own homes than their parents were. High interest rates, surging home prices, and limited supply are locking them out. Rents have climbed to record highs. In the US, the typical mortgage payment hit $2,800 per month by 2024, while wages have barely kept pace. Many Gen Z are stuck renting, living with family, or crowdfunding deposits. No wonder TikTok jokes about living, forever, in parents' basements. But the punchline is painful: a home of your own may be out of reach for life. For context, Gen Z first-time buyers might end up paying £104,000 in mortgage just in the first 5 years, far more than boomers ever did in real terms. The generational shift is stark. What was normal for boomers' homeownership feels nearly impossible for Zoomers today. Gen Z is often hailed as the most educated generation yet, but that education is coming at a crushing cost. College tuition and student loans are at all-time highs across the globe, and Gen Z is right in the crosshairs. Two big pieces of the burden: skyrocketing tuition and loans. In the US, the average college graduate carries around $28,400 in student debt. In the UK, graduates leave university owing an eye-popping $54,000 on average. These debts continue to grow even with some income-based repayment plans. Young Canadians face similar stresses, with provincial and federal student loans often exceeding tens of thousands of dollars by graduation. Even in Australia, where tuition is income contingent, many Gen Zers graduate with large HECS help debts they'll pay off over decades. The punchline: a degree no longer guarantees financial security, it often just adds another monthly bill. More education, less return. It's not just debt, Gen Z is more qualified than any prior generation. About 57% of Gen Z 18 to 21-year-olds were enrolled in college or university in 2022, compared to 52% of millennials and just 43% of Gen X at the same age. In other words, they're out-earning previous generations in degrees. Yet the rewards haven't scaled up. A Bureau of Labor Statistics analysis shows Gen Z is paying 31% more for housing and more than doubling their car insurance costs compared to millennials at the same age, while their real wage growth has only been about 26%. In short, Gen Z has more education and often more credentials but is saddled with even higher living costs than millennials were. Many young people from the class of 2022 face the worst of both worlds: distance learning during COVID and no fully developed job market afterward. They paid full tuition for Zoom classes, then found internships and entry-level jobs evaporated during the pandemic. More than half of Gen Z students say student debt does or will prevent them from following their passions, and a survey by Ipsos found a quarter of Brits doubt university is worth it because of fees and debt. Gen Z is left asking, is the student loan worth the degree? Education debt also intersects with early career choices. Many postpone grad school or career moves just to avoid adding more debt. Some skip college entirely, choosing lower-paying trades or dead-end jobs, fearing they'll never fully pay off a degree. The financial shackles of education mean Gen Z can't just keep learning to land a better job. Like before, they feel trapped by what they owe. On paper, Gen Z has advantages: higher college attendance and, at least in the US, higher wages than millennials did at the same age. In fact, Bank of America data shows Gen Z's after-tax wages grew at about 8% year-over-year by early 2025, roughly double the overall median growth. But that glimmer of progress is overshadowed by larger economic headwinds. Wage versus cost. Even with rising pay, General Zers see those dollars eaten by costs. Wages up 26% aren't enough when rents, insurance, and groceries jump 40 to 50%. For instance, Washington Post analysis noted Gen Z is now paying 31% more for housing than millennials did at the same age. Car and health insurance bills for young adults have more than doubled or nearly doubled since 2012, far outpacing their modest income gains. It's a raw deal: more skills and work ethic but less purchasing power. Tough job market. Post-pandemic hiring has been rocky. Young workers frequently face layoffs or underemployment. One Bank of America report found unemployment for new labor market entrants, mostly Gen Z, spiked nearly 10% year-over-year in early 2024, and the number of Gen Z households claiming unemployment benefits jumped by about *32%*. In plain terms, entry-level jobs are thinner on the ground. Many Gen Zers report taking any gig they can find, from food delivery to freelance side hustles, just to pay bills. The rise of the gig economy. Speaking of side hustles, Gen Z has embraced the gig culture out of necessity. A recent Australian survey found 80% of young people believe having a side gig is now essential, and 77% said they'd switch jobs readily for better pay or flexibility. Multi-job incomes are common, some even call it the new normal for paying rent and servicing debt. In the US, finance FinTalk trends show Gen Z researching everything from crypto trading to online tutoring, anything to boost their thinning paychecks. Automation anxiety. Another stress factor is the looming AI revolution. In a surprising survey, 37% of hiring managers admitted they'd prefer to hire AI or bots over Gen Z graduates. Whether that reflects bias or the reality of automation, it sends a chilling message to a generation already scrambling for internships and entry-level roles. Every Gen Z engineer or marketer wonders, is my job next on the chopping block? And each new AI tool feels like a coworker stealing hours, a digital specter watching their backs. In short, Gen Z entered a world where the economy is volatile, global competition is fierce, and traditional career ladders have rickety rungs. Add record inflation to the mix, more on that next, and it's no surprise young workers feel like they're paddling upstream in jeans on quicksand. Many compare it to previous generations' crises. Boomers lived through high inflation but low debt, millennials weathered the 2008 crash, but Gen Z got hit with all three: a pandemic, a war-triggered inflation spike, and now AI disruptions. It's a perfect storm that they never signed up for. Inflation and the cost of living squeeze. If the 1970s style price hikes were a machine, Gen Z is the wrecking ball bearing the brunt. From 2021-2023, global inflation shot up to levels unseen in decades. Food, energy, rent, all essential costs surged. Many young people didn't just lose hope of buying a home, they started worrying how to even cover groceries. Deloitte's global survey of Gen Z and millennials found cost of living was their number one of worry, by far, beating even fears about jobs or the climate. We're talking real anxiety. For Gen Z around the world, everyday expenses have become a crisis. In fact, more than half of Gen Z in one study said they aren't making enough money to live the life they want, and high living costs are a top challenge. Many have changed spending habits drastically. CNBC reported that 73% of Gen Z Americans altered how they spend because of inflation, cutting back on dining out, cutting coupons, delaying purchases. Food and essentials. Post-COVID supply snarls in the Ukraine war sent food prices into the stratosphere. In some countries, basic items rose over 50% in just a year. For a Gen Z renter on a tight budget, that can mean cutting back on fresh produce or skipping meals. One 24-year-old from New Zealand told the World Economic Forum survey, "I'm unable to afford to start a family and have had to take on a second job, which is affecting my health." That's not an isolated anecdote, it sums up the widespread struggle. Housing inflation. We saw how rent and mortgage costs went up. For example, U.S. mortgage rates jumped from approximately 3% to over 6% in 1 year, putting loan payments through the roof. Even with rising wages, many Gen Z can't keep up. One thing Deloitte highlighted: while young adults are cautiously optimistic about the economy, financial insecurity still plagues them. 6 in 10 live paycheck to paycheck, meaning any price shock, gas, rent, health care, can tip them into crisis. Insurance and car costs. The unexpected second bill. Gen Z spends much more on car and health insurance today. Bureau of Labor stats via Washington Post show insurance costs for 16 to 24-year-olds have more than doubled since 2012. Auto insurance alone surged plus 100% for young people over a decade. Car payments, maintenance, even a flat tire can push budgets to the brink. And remember, this all follows a global pandemic. Many Gen Z spent 2020-21 with reduced or no income, lost summer jobs, gigs, internships while still accruing rents and loan interest. They entered 2022 already behind. When prices shot up everywhere, Gen Z was simply thinner-skinned to the hit. One UK survey even found older people mistakenly blamed young folks spending on lattes or takeout, not realizing inflation was the true culprit. Meanwhile, Gen Z had no coffee budget to cut, they were already skipping it. The result, for many Zoomers, managing daily life now feels like juggling knives. Every price hike adds stress. Nearly half of renters in Canada reported sacrificing basics, food, clothing, even education, just to afford rent. Mental health is suffering. 40% of Gen Z say they feel stressed all or most of the time, often citing financial worries as the trigger. It's hard to daydream about future goals when the present costs are painfully real. Now let's talk culture. How does Gen Z respond to all this? What do they want from work and life? Spoiler: it's complicated. On one hand, this generation is often accused of being lazy or entitled by boomers and even some millennials. But dig deeper, and you find a generation reshaping what work means. They're digital natives, social justice warriors, meme connoisseurs, and they do care about pay, but also about purpose and balance. Deloitte's survey found nearly all Gen Z say a sense of purpose is key in their jobs. Many would turn down a job or assignment if it clashes with their values, bad boss, unethical practice, etc. This isn't slack, it's a generation used to having information and alternatives at their fingertips, demanding more than just a paycheck. Another top priority: flexibility. COVID taught Gen Z the benefits of remote work and work-life balance. In fact, work-life balance is their #1 factor in choosing an employer. Yet now many are back in offices under return-to-work mandates. 64% recently saw a new back-to-office policy. That clash fuels resentment. They've seen what else is possible: a 4-day week, 8-hour day, location freedom, and don't easily go back. A quarter of Gen Z say they'd rather quit than stay in a toxic or inflexible job. It's also worth noting how Gen Z copes: humor and community online. Think of those viral memes, the ones with smug cats, failed Italian coffee spots, or any "adulting is hard" joke. Those jokes land because they resonate. For example, one trending TikTok audio goes, "When your paycheck arrives, do you eat it or drink it?" implying rent bills and coffee. Gen Z uses social media to vent frustrations, for instance, in a #GenZProblems TikTok, proving they're not alone. Even inflation has become meme fodder. Jokes about sharing one avocado toast with a friend to save costs, or the stereotype of the young person Googling rent assistance while sipping 99-cent coffee. Irony too. In pop culture, songs like Billie Eilish's or Princess Nokia's anthems capture Gen Z malaise, the vibe of feeling both world-weary and hopeful. Gen Z activism on climate or social justice also reflects a community attitude. They refuse to sit quietly, even if the economic cards are stacked. But this activism can be stressful. Caring about big issues while struggling to pay rent adds a mental load. Generationally, this attitude shift is stark. Millennials famously popularized grind culture and startups, but Gen Z is pushing back, saying, burnout isn't a badge of honor. 64% of Gen Z say workplace stress drives them nuts. They're frank about mental health too. Only about half rate their mental health as good, and many cite job stress as a cause. They've seen elder siblings burn out in 2010s tech firms and don't want the same fate. Instead they trade off jobs, switch fields, or yes, take that side gig. What about boomers and Gen X? Some in those generations cling to the old American dream script: go to college, buy a home, get a secure job. But Gen Z grew up watching that script crumble: student loan defaults, rent inflation, job insecurity. So it's no surprise many Zoomers are cynical about hard work always paying off. They see family members taking crisis-level retirements or losing homes to crises, and they're wary. But one thing unites many. Despite the odds, most Gen Z still want that stability. Surveys show over half want to buy a home in the next few years, and 68% of Canadians under 44 plan on saving for a home. They might delay it, but the desire is there. The difference is the path is steeper, and the scenery along the way is harsher. So where does this leave Gen Z? With one foot in uncertainty and another in high hopes, their future is both unwritten and precarious. They're the first generation carrying such heavy economic scars so early: early career debt, early family delays, early career stress. Yet they're also adaptable, networked, and resourceful. The big question hanging in the air is, will Gen Z's struggle become the new normal, or a wake-up call? Will society change to meet them halfway, or will this generation have to rewrite the rules entirely? In closing, consider this. These are young people who grew up on the internet, were told they could change the world, yet faced a cascade of global crises. Their memes and music videos tell a story of frustration and resilience. As a society, if we don't understand Gen Z's challenges, we may miss the chance to support a generation that could reinvent economies and cultures. So here's the final thought. Not an answer, but a spark. When a generation that gave us TikTok and climate activism and viral kindness challenges gets a reality like this, what will they do with it? The future might depend on how we respond. Will we help Gen Z build a fair ladder to climb, or watch them carve a new path altogether?